Massive development concerning Gaza. Hamas has agreed to release Edan Alexander, the last remaining American Israeli soldier in the Hamas's captivity. I will come to the full details related to this huge development in a bit. But if you watch the broadcast of the BBC, you would get the sense that this is another example of Donald Trump isolating war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu on the Gaza issue. Anyway, coming back to the Hamas's decision to release the American Israeli soldier, this is being seen as a good gesture towards Trump ahead of his visit to the Middle East. A statement by the Hamas chief in Gaza said that his negotiators had been holding direct talks with the Americans. Yes, direct talks without the involvement of the Israelis. Dr. Khalil Al Hayya, the head of Hamas in Gaza, said, and I quote, as part of the efforts being made by our mediator brothers to achieve a ceasefire, Hamas has been in contact with the US administration over the past few days. The movement has expressed a high degree of positivity and the release of Israeli soldier Edan Alexander, a dual US citizen, will be part of the steps being taken to achieve a ceasefire, open the crossings, and allow aid and relief to reach our people in the Gaza Strip. The movement affirms its readiness to immediately begin intensive negotiations and exert serious efforts to reach a final agreement to end the war, exchange prisoners by mutual consent, and administer the Gaza Strip to an independent professional body. This will ensure continued calm and stability for many years, along with reconstruction and an end to the blockade. The movement appreciates the tireless efforts made by our mediator brothers in the sisterly state of Qatar and the Arab Republic of Egypt, as well as our brothers in Turkey throughout the past period. End quote. So, two massive points coming out from this statement that the US is directly engaging with Hamas, and Hamas is ready for a new administration of Gaza to be set up without its involvement. This will leave terrorist Netanyahu without any more excuses to carry out the brutal slaughtering of innocent children and babies. As I reported in recent days on Trump's growing disenchantment with Netanyahu, even the BBC has now started to report along the same line. Watch this BBC representative reveal how the Trump administration kept Netanyahu in the dark even on this latest development and informed the war criminal wanted by the International Criminal Court only after a deal had been struck with Hamas.
Well, let's cross live now to Jerusalem and to our Middle East correspondent, Hugo Bachega. Hugo, thank you for joining us. What do we know about the hostage's condition, Edan Alexander? How was he treated and what he's been through?
Well, this obviously, we don't have exact details about his conditions, but I do know that this announcement that was made by Hamas came after confirmation that direct talks were happening between Hamas and the US administration in Doha in Qatar, which has been acting as a mediator since the beginning of the conflict. And now this announcement by Hamas that Edan Alexander is going to be released. Hamas is describing this announcement as a gesture, as a step towards reaching a final deal in Gaza. And I think the context here is crucial because this happens just days before President Trump is due to arrive in the region. The president will be in the Middle East on Tuesday. So we've seen that there have been efforts happening to try to reach a deal for a ceasefire and hostage release in Gaza. And also amid multiple reports suggesting a growing discontent in the Trump administration over the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's position in these negotiations. Hamas says that it will only accept a deal that includes the end of the war in Gaza, something that has been repeatedly rejected by the Israeli Prime Minister. And he's facing accusations, claims that he's prolonging the conflict in Gaza for political political purposes. He's under pressure at home. Support for the war in Israel is falling, and obviously there is this humanitarian crisis in Gaza that is getting worse. As a result of this Israeli siege that has been imposed on Gaza, no food, basic supplies have entered the territory for 70 days. So significant announcement made by Hamas after those direct talks with Trump administration officials.
I'll just bring in this statement we've had from the Israeli Prime Minister's office. It says the US informed Israel of Hamas' intention to release Edan Alexander as a gesture towards the Americans without any compensation or conditions. Do you think we can read into this hostage release that it is a sign of progress in efforts to bring about a ceasefire?
Well, I think we've seen a number of decisions and announcements that have been made by the United States in recent days that, according to experts and commentators in Israel, suggest that again there is this growing frustration in Washington with the Israeli Prime Minister. We had last week the announcement by President Trump that the United States had made a deal with the Houthis in Yemen to stop attacking Houthi positions in Yemen, something that apparently caught Israeli officials by surprise. Now this announcement today, again after those direct talks between the Trump administration and Hamas in Doha, and there has been a lot of speculation as well about the possible negotiations happening between Trump administration officials and officials in Saudi Arabia. This is going to be one of the countries that President Trump is going to be visit when he's here in the Middle East. Also, Trump administration's officials are involved in conversations, in talks with Iranian officials about Iran's nuclear program, which is obviously a huge concern for Israeli officials. So when you look at the bigger picture, it seems that the Americans are going ahead with their plans without perhaps informing their Israeli colleagues, Israeli counterparts. So this has been seen by many in Israel as another sign of this growing frustration in the US with the way the Israeli Prime Minister is conducting the war.
Sky News reporter Alistair Bunkle hinted at the embarrassment caused by Netanyahu to Trump's foreign policy when he broke the ceasefire deal in March.
Donald Trump comes to the Middle East to visit Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE this week, or this coming week, and there is huge anticipation about what might be announced, particularly in relation to the war in Gaza. We know the Americans are putting together a plan to allow humanitarian aid, desperately needed humanitarian aid, to get back into Gaza, which we think has the Israeli backing, and would utilize a private contraction firm, probably made up of former US soldiers. Now, that has been criticized by some because it would bypass aid agencies. Initially, at least, quite a significant proportion of Gazans wouldn't be eligible to receive that aid, because the idea is that by using private contractors you would ensure that it didn't get into the hands of Hamas. But we think that that is being worked on. But now talks between the various interested parties, that is obviously Hamas, the United States, Egypt and Qatar, seem to have resumed in something of a meaningful way. We're not sure, we don't think that these are direct talks between the United States and Hamas. But there is a suggestion that as well as aid delivery into Gaza, there could be attempts to try and broker a new ceasefire deal. Now, the backdrop to all of it is that the Israelis have announced plans for a major escalation in Gaza once Trump leaves the region. Trump, incidentally, is not coming to visit Israel as it stands. And the Israelis are calling up thousands of reservists, preparing the military. They're saying they're going to conquer large parts of the Gaza Strip. You've got right-wing nationalists within the Israeli government saying that Israel will remain there and occupy Gaza permanently. And so I know that Arab states are trying to lean on Hamas to say, do some sort of ceasefire deal. If nothing else, it could delay the Israeli offensive and allow time for more talks. But Donald Trump, we know, likes to make big announcements. He likes to boast about major wins. And he was certainly congratulated for getting the last ceasefire over the line. But that ceasefire collapsed back in March when Israel broke it and continued fighting in Gaza. And it is somewhat embarrassed Donald Trump's foreign policy on this front. So it could be that there's an American-led drive now to see whether another ceasefire is possible, though it is all wrapped up in Trump's visit in the next coming few days.
Trump wrote on Truth Social, and I quote, "My next truth will be one of the most important and impactful I have ever issued. Enjoy." End quote. We will wait for him to shed more light on his impactful news, but many believe that he was referring to this development. Look, my sense is that Trump has realized that Netanyahu, a war criminal, is capable of destroying his legacy if he sided with him for far too long. Trump is definitely not winning any Nobel Peace Prize by helping Netanyahu, a war criminal, bloodthirsty terrorist, slaughter more babies. His envoy, Steve Witkoff, is in the region holding direct talks with Hamas for this purpose. As for Hamas, the Palestinian group is keen to tell Trump that Netanyahu and his terrorist ministers had been telling lies about them. Remember one of Trump's own envoys who had praised Hamas before he was removed from his post under Israeli pressure.
Understand why Netanyahu, Dermer, others might be upset.
I do understand. I spoke with Ron, and I'm sympathetic. He has someone that he doesn't know well, making direct contact with Hamas. Maybe I would see them and say, look, they don't have horns growing out of their head. They're actually guys like us. They're pretty nice guys. So he doesn't know me, and there are big stakes. He lives in a country where if it sets certain precedents, then it will hurt or help a lot of other people. So I understand the consternation and the concern, and I wasn't upset. At the same time, we're the United States. We're not an agent of Israel. We have specific interests at play.
Trump is particularly careful about his image. He wants to be treated as the most important and powerful person on earth by virtue of being the president of the USA. If anyone, and I mean anyone, tries to dent this image of his, he is unlikely to react very kindly. Maybe Netanyahu took the Trump's hospitality at the White House too seriously. Anyway, these are early days. For the sake of 2 million people of Gaza, I sincerely hope Trump wields his clout and resume the flow of the much needed aid for them. I will return with more update on this and other big news items. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.